And we can go ahead and go live. Live on Facebook. You gotta love it.
I gotta figure out how to do this sometime.
The good news is it's pretty simple. Give me one sec here. I'm just going to mute the browser that pops open. Give me one sec here. I'm just going to mute the browser that pops open. All right, there we go. And we are live. Welcome, everyone. My name's Amanda Kunkel, and of course, you're here on my lovely personal page. In case you haven't gotten my own proper introduction, I'm your universe liaison, which is just a fancy way of saying you're a business psychic. And I have with me my dear colleague, Kirsten Beske, who I have known, has it been a good 2 years now?
I think so.
It's been something like that. And I adore her brilliance. And as you know, part of what the universe has guided me to do this summer is to share and share and share and share so that everyone's receiving gifts all throughout the summer. And so I asked Kirsten to come bring her special sauce here for you to gift to you. And she said, well, let's talk about the next level of you in your identity, with your life and your business. And I was like, okay. That sounds perfect, because that's totally like 2023 in a nutshell. So that being said, Kirsten, I know you can explain you and your brilliance so much better than I can. We all know that I sort of mince words anyway, much more of the vibration. So I'm going to go ahead and let you explain more beautifully what that special sauce with the next level identity is.
Well, thanks, Amanda, and thank you so much for having me here and letting me share here on your channel. I have so much admiration for you and the work you do, so I really feel extra honored to be here. Well, so what I do, the very short version is I'm a change expert. and so I help people move through changes in personal identity, in careers, in how their life is aligned and set up. But I do it in a way that doesn't throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak. So instead of like reinventing yourself and having to throw out all these things that are good and just reinvent yourself, I really like to dig into where people's strengths are, what are their acquired wisdom and accumulated knowledge and values, and like how do we rearrange all the pieces in a way that feels better aligned and feels like you're really living into your purpose for this particular stage of life that you're at.
And can you share with everyone, because I know the details, and this is why I think you should share them, because they're freaking amazing. I remember when I found them out about you, I was like, oh, holy crap. Your career shifts and your own personal transformation shifts, like, which is what makes you like not just the book expert, so to speak, but the like you lived through it and you've thrived through it expert.
Well, yes, we have a limited amount of time, but I'll give everyone the Reader's Digest version. I mean, once upon a time, I was a lawyer, right? And so that was my first career, and I loved my career for a long time. I was a litigator. I was a partner at a law firm, worked in Boston at a big old fancy firm. I could look out over the Boston Harbor and see my yachts pull up next to my office. It was really like living the dream. And you know, time went on, and then I moved to Vermont with my then husband, and I was a partner in a law firm in Vermont where I still did litigation work, largely for big companies. And I really was enjoying it because I was a competitive athlete. I liked, you know, quote, fighting, and kind of like playing, you know, the like game of how do you take all of the knowledge of the facts of your case and apply the law to it and then make your best arguments on behalf of your client. You know, that was fun for me. And then I decided to have a couple kids in the middle of all this, which was, you know, it seemed like a good idea at the time. And of course it was a good idea, but unfortunately, neither one of my kids' birth process were simple and easy. And so my first child, my then daughter, we went to the well baby visit. She had a heart rate of a 350 or something like that. The doctor's like, can you please take your baby and walk to the emergency room? um, ended
Yeah.
up, she had a heart tumor. We ended up in a helicopter up to Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, and then it ended up at Boston Children's, where she had open heart bypass surgery to remove this tumor that was causing her heart to be in an arrhythmia. And the happy news is she ended up very fine. Hard, no, she was followed, but no problems over all these years. She's 23 now, and she's awesome. Then we said out loud, well, what could be worse than open heart surgery on an infant? Let's have another. And so I got pregnant again, and this was 2001. And if you recall, 2001 was the year of the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center and over Pennsylvania. So the 9/11 attacks. And so I was about the same amount of time I had actually been put on bed rest for the last 3 months of my first pregnancy. And I was right about that time when this happened. So, and very sadly, one of my dear friends from childhood and my first boyfriend was in one of the towers, and he passed away, but it took a while to, know whether he'd be found or not. And so I was really, really wanting to get to his funeral. And so I asked the doctor, am I okay to travel? Because I was around that time where I might be going on bed rest. And doctor, of course, said, yes, you are. And of course, I wasn't. And that night, actually, I went into labor and they couldn't stop it this time. So the poor kid, I had Corey 3 months early. His due date had been January 7th, and he was born September 26th.
Were
And
you
he
in
was
a car or an airplane or anything?
no, just a regular old, like, get yourself to the hospital. So they were able to do the thing where they give you a couple shots for the baby's lungs. So they were able to do that for him, which I think might have been the difference of life or death. But he was super early, 1 pound 11 ounces, and he just was in the hospital for 3 months while he learned how to breathe and do all the things. And it was very, very intense. So it was in fact worse than open heart surgery, Anna. And so it turned my life a little more upside down. You can imagine trying to practice law as a partner with 2 kids, both of whom had needed a little extra help with their management. So I, very smartly, I think, had one of those, after everyone was settled and healthy, I kind of had my own crisis, right? It was a little more of an existential crisis. Like, what is the point of this? Like, why do we bring children into a world where people die in skyscrapers in Manhattan? And, what is the point of life, essentially? And when I really took the time and sat down, I was like, you know what? I think that the point of my life is to be of service to people. I thought I would get that going into the law, but I don't do that because I do a lot of work for big companies and complex cases. And I feel more called to do direct service to people. And I went back and got a master's degree in psychology and switched careers completely. And I became a psychotherapist. And for the next decade plus, I had my own private practice, and I really was able to serve people. And it served me, right? Like, it was a mutual win. And this is what I hope for my clients too, because here I was a mother of 2 young kids. I needed flexibility. I needed to not have the court telling me when I needed to be there. I needed to not have depositions scheduled to, like, that I had to be in, Middlebury, Vermont on this date from this time, because you didn't know when you're going to have to pivot and change for your kids. So being a therapist was perfect. I was helping people, and I had some flexibility over my schedule, and it was great. And, then life changed again. And we don't have to get into that per se, but during this time, I also ended up divorcing my husband, and I'm now married to a woman, which was a very big personality change for me, because I did not identify as a queer person when I was younger, and all of a sudden I am, and I was. Who knew? And so these big personality shifts in identity, they take time to metabolize and to feel comfortable with and to bring into light. And so when my clients are making some changes in their lives, whether they're small or big, I not only understand psychologically what's going on with them as they move through these stages of change, but personally what it feels like when you're making a change, and how just, destabilizing and scary it can be, and how to work through that to get to the other side where you actually have made this shift and you realize it's for the best, and you feel really good because you're aligned with your strengths, and you're aligned with your purpose, and you're aligned with your meaning, and you're aligned with yourself. And like, it just feels so much more easeful and gives you that freedom, and sense of purpose that I think, well, not I think, but the world of positive psychology has shown that all those pieces are really important to feel like you're having a life well lived.
And I love that you use the word positive psychology, because when I was getting my undergraduate degree, my BA in psychology, positive psychology was like a hush hush thing at that point. They're like, wait, like there's like two schools in like Northern California that you could get like a PsyD or something in. And but it's like, do you really want to? Because you're kind of like on the fringe and it's not ready for it. Real psychology. I heard that all the time. And well, I didn't pursue a master's or a doctorate. It's amazing to see how like that exploded all over the scene. And now is this very core principle about like life in general. It's like you don't have to. I know when you were a child, it was probably more so than when I was a child. It was like, oh, they're going to therapy. Like there had to be something really, really wrong, or like a very serious mental illness going on. But now it's like, no, the world is constantly changing. The world's constantly evolving. And as you've shared so graciously with your personal life, like it's constantly like plot twist.
Right. And how do you have the resilience and the skills to survive the plot twist? Sometimes that happen to you, and sometimes you have happen to yourself, you make happen. But
Yes.
that is actually how I got into coaching, was exactly through the window of positive psychology, because that framework didn't exist, just like you said. Even when I went to school to get my master's, I think, yeah, I had not. It was maybe just starting to be a degree at the University of Pennsylvania with Martin Seligman, but I didn't know about it. But what I learned about it, and it's like the science of how we thrive. It's not, people hear positive psychology and they think, oh, you mean like that toxic positivity? And it's like, no, no, that's not. It's just a bad name that they made up for it. But it's just like literally the science of how people thrive, and what are the main pillars that we can like lean on to make sure we have a good life. And that's how I got into coaching, because you can help everybody with that stuff. You don't have to have a mental health diagnosis, so you don't need to be subpar functioning and to get qualified to go see a therapist. You just have to be a human being in the world, and you can learn some of these tenets of positive psychology and really improve the quality of your life. So that's pretty cool.
That is cool. And I love how you're saying the quality of your life, because it's like, this is the difference between like waking up every day, feet hit the ground, you get your coffee, you yell at the kids to get out the door, you drive everyone to school, you drop them off, you drive to your job or however that looks, you fight with traffic, you scroll on your phone when you can throughout the day, and then you come home to like throw a frozen pizza in the dinner and say, thank God that the day's over, and go to bed, right? Like there's like existing, and then there's thriving. And existing, like, okay, like sometimes it does happen here or there, but it's like nobody really actually wants it. They want to thrive. They want to go pursue what makes them happy and not feel like they're in this like gray world all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And so when I first started out from coaching, I was helping, anybody who was in, I would say in their second career or even third career, like, had some experience under their belt, knew enough about themselves, but just wasn't happy with that grind. And how do I help them tweak that into something that's more fulfilling and more sustaining for them? And then when I moved into the world of entrepreneurs, I realized a lot of entrepreneurs need to take that kind of a deep dive into their business structure as well, and just make sure that they are aligning with all those pieces of themselves so that they're thriving and not just recreating this grind that they maybe had when they had a job job, right?
And do you often find that, especially with the entrepreneurs, it's like they learned from, maybe a couple different people or reading a couple different books or working with a couple different experts. They're like, okay, well, this is what works to make my business bring in money. So this is what we're going to do. And it accidentally, like they're shifting into that job.
Right, right. They don't do it on purpose. I know, I don't think anyone overworks themselves consciously. It's usually all the subconscious programming that just sends you in a certain direction, right? But if you don't have any role models or any vision for how else it could be, you might just not be able to see all the options around you. And I know if I hadn't been a therapist before I became a coach, I would probably have a different business model, and I'm sure I would have burned myself out. Because, but when you're a therapist, you're working on an hourly basis, seeing clients one-on-one, and the limit of your income is the limit of how many people you can see, and that is a recipe for disaster.
Yes, and
So
I'm just so everyone knows, I'm looking down at my phone to see if there are any comments, because sometimes it doesn't show up on the web app, right? But it shows up on the phone. So
yeah,
perfect. So we are good.
all
Um,
good.
what is like the most consistent from client to client that these entrepreneurs have come to you with, and you're like, oh, this is the first thing or one of the first things we need to tweak?
Well, the beginning work I do with everyone is just to make sure they've done a recent inventory of themselves in the place they are in the world now, because we change over time, right? From stage of life to stage of life. So something that's important to you in your 20s may be less important to you in your 30s, and maybe completely irrelevant in your 40s or later. So I like to have everyone do a character strengths assessment, and then also take a deep dive into basic values. And maybe you're clear on this stuff and we get to slide over that. But and then strengths, right? Like strengths are just so important, that because once we identify our strengths, we get to broaden the area that we can use them in. And then the last piece that's super important up front is purpose, right? What is your, everyone talks about your big why now because of Simon Sinek, but in the positive psychology, this understanding, and it kind of came from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, when he spent time in the death camps, and he was in Auschwitz, I think specifically. He got to observe the people around him, and he found that the people who had some sense of purpose in their life there, even if it was just taking care of someone else or serving food somewhere, they had a tendency to survive more than people who didn't have a sense of purpose. Those were the people who really just didn't have as much resilience for that horrible process. So purpose is huge, and purpose changes over time. So if you haven't looked at your sense of overall arching purpose lately, it's important to do that as a check-in.
So the people that you work with, when they come to you and you're like, okay, we're going to do this thing first, when was the last time you looked at? What's your typical answer from them? When is the last time they took some sort of self inventory or thought deeper about that?
Right. Well, it really does vary from person to person, but most of the people coming to work with me haven't done it in a while. And the ones that have, it's great, because then we just move on to the next stage, which is like, how do we get the kind of, some people come with, they don't even know what their pieces of their puzzle look like, right? When you dump a puzzle on a table, the first thing you do is you have to turn them all up so you can see what color they are. And maybe the next thing you do is put the edges out somewhere. So when someone comes to me, if they haven't even turned all their pieces over yet, we have to start there. Like, let's see what colors we're working with. And then we got to start in on the edges, like, your purpose and your meaning. That's like, where are those straight lines? And then we get to rearrange the pieces so that they fit like a glove, right? How do you rearrange the pieces so that it works for you at this point?
Right. And so if somebody's listening to this and they're like, well, I kind of have had a couple plot twists thrown in, and, I kind of feel like maybe there have been a couple of those like JOB type feeling days. What is the point at which everyone pretty much reaches out? Like, and what is the point that you say you should reach out before ABC?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Well, no, yeah, absolutely. So most people have this either, well, if they're at a JOB, whether it's self-inflicted or other, and they're feeling, bored, or that everything's super tedious, or they're underappreciated, or they're burned out. Like a burnout is big, right? You just don't have any energy for anything anymore. They're tired on a daily basis. And especially if you're moving into like the no joy zone, where you're tending towards just like, what's the point? I'm just not finding any pleasure in my life anymore. Or you just feel like you're stuck on this hamster wheel and you just can never stop and take a rest. Those are all times to check in and be like, maybe something's wrong here.
So, and that is perfect that you said that, because as you're working with these entrepreneurs, they're very well trained, and luckily so in one way, to look at like, well, what's going on with my business analytics? What's going on with my business statistics? What's going on? And haven't, right? Because you said a lot of them haven't in a while taken inventory. It's almost like, it sounds like it's hard for them to recognize, oh, wait, everything Kirsten literally just said is also happening at the same time. Could this be related to what's going on in my business? What do you find there, and what's your best
Well, yeah, well, the funny part is that the women I work with are amazing people. Every single client I've ever had, it just like blown my mind how amazing they are. And pretty much every single one of them, once I maybe point out an area that, or we, co-identified area that maybe they need to shift in, they always knew the answer. Everyone has within them this wisdom. It's usually when we're not paying attention to our inner wisdom, or our conscious brain knows that's the answer. Like if your friend told you that, you would be like, well, you have to just do blah blah blah, but we don't. It's harder to do it to ourselves, to reflect back to ourselves, and sometimes it's really hard to get the perspective we need all alone, right? It's we need that extra little degree or two off of reflection back to see ourselves a little more clearly.
What would be a concrete example that you would feel good sharing here, and feel, in ethics sharing here, that can help this concept sink in deeper?
The concept of when to reach out for help,
When to
or
reach out, but then what is actually going on?
right. Well, so if you are burnt out, for example, we'll just go with the burnout because so many people could at least know that phrase. So if you're tired every morning, if you're kind of dreading your day, if you're not carving out time for those things that are just fun and give you pleasure, you're going to feel kind of, your energy level is going to feel really low, and your mood is probably going to be low, and you're going to just wonder, well, am I, how do I, if I want better results, working harder is no longer possible, right? I mean, because there's a point at which we all hit at that wall of like, I've worked so hard, I'm so burned out, it's not happening how I want it to. So
Their life, do you mean?
Like, well, so this is the cool part about the work I do is that I look at the person holistically. So all the entrepreneurs I work with, we do not solely look at the business side of things, because actually that's, while maybe if you're doing analytics and statistics, you can do that in the kind of work that I do, you have to look at the whole picture. So you have to look at all the different pieces of your life and look how they all work together as a system. You can't just separate out, oh, this is my business and this is my life. Now that may be a coping mechanism that you can use,
Right.
but
Can you share from maybe a specific, and feel free to, change the name and some details of a specific client who came to you for, maybe it was life or maybe it was business, and then when you got in there deep, you're like, but it actually was.
right. Okay. Well, I can think of one client in particular who was super accomplished, working at a school as a professor and running her business on the side, but not, like doing the both and thing, and working really hard at too many things, just like constantly doing. And
Both
yeah,
types of work, because I want to verify
yeah,
the work here.
yeah. So doing, work, and also running 3 kids in the house kind of work, both and, and also because some of the work was being a mentor for younger students because of the work at the university, just taking care of lots of other people, right? And so, and then really wishing that the entrepreneurial business that they had started was going to be, making more money and doing more. But there was literally no space to push harder. And so the question is, right, when you look at that, what's really going on? And sometimes when you get down under the layers of what is really going on, I mean, you never know what you're going to find. In this case, what we found was this association of hard work and self-worth, right? So many of us have been socialized to believe that is if we're working really, really hard, then we are satisfied all of the things we need to do, so we're worthy as a human. Whereas another way to think of it is we are all worthy at a very fundamental level of being human by the virtue of being alive. And the work is not connected in that way. You can disconnect hard work from self-worth, and get your sense of self-worth in other ways. And then that's becomes the work. Like, how can you feel good about yourself, your contributions to the world, how you are in the world, and how can you switch the lens to reflect on yourself in a really kind and attractive and a generous way without necessarily hooking into the hard work. And can you then create more space? And once you can create more spaciousness, then can you actually thrive doing these things that are in your zone of genius without grinding yourself down to a nub?
Yeah, I love how you said grinding yourself down to a nub, right? Because there's like nothing left. And for her, and I'm sure it looks different for everybody, but for her, was this like a relinquishing some of the extra stuff that she had taken on, and which could be like constantly doing all of the kids runs or picking up all of their friends for soccer practice, or like the things that high functioning people just take on because they can.
Right. Yes. There's all of those things that, I could, the things people can relinquish are long. And it's interesting where different people get stuck, right? So one person may not want to give up cleaning their own house, whereas I would be like, are you insane? Of course you want someone else to help you clean, because I hate cleaning, right?
Are you insane? I love that.
But that's my value system, right? Someone else's value system might be more happy with giving up, the kids run to school. Or in this case, this woman was so high functioning that she had written 2 books and she was thinking she had to start her third in addition to all of the other things she's doing. So it was kind of like, well, is that a priority now? Do you have to, publish your 3rd book in order to feel good about yourself? Or can that be something that waits? Like, which are the things, and everyone gets to pick for themselves, which are the things at this particular stage are not as important and can drop off. So whether it's as simple as cleaning your house or using Instacart to get your groceries, to not writing that book, or not taking that promotion. Quite a few people I work with, you might be surprised to hear this, the goal is actually how to downsize work to live life more, right? And that's the solution. So it seems really counterintuitive. Is instead of the next level being like, oh my god, that means we have to do more to get to the next level, it's actually, how do we take away enough that you can come into being your next level in a more full way?
Yes, and that goes entirely with the universe teachings of opening your up wider, which often means relinquishing some things that aren't actually that important, so that you can receive more of what you desire. So it's like, it sounds like it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It's just implemented a little bit differently, but that's gorgeous. And thank you for sharing those concrete examples, because I know for you and I, when we could have this conversation without concrete examples and like insert the concrete examples in our heads, because we've been around for so long doing this, right? Where when somebody comes to you, they may have never had any, like so many women listening to this, right? Even with my audience being at that multiple 6 figures, may never have dove in this area. So they'd be like, wait, what?
Right.
To like something with like explaining the law that you worked in, I'd be like, I right over my head. So thank you. Thank you. That was really helpful. And of course, anyone listening, live or on replay, please post if you have any questions or what is resonating with you from what Kirsten is saying, because this is the important stuff, right? Life is about living, and we're all constantly evolving. Just as Kirsten shared from her own story, life, her life, her experiences, we all have something similar and know how isolating, exhausting, depressing, anxiety producing, lonely that can produce. And, I say this sitting here at the farm watching like these 12 horses, right? One or two go in one direction, the whole herd follows. And if they don't, if one gets separated, they literally will stand there and cry. So, and by cry, I mean like make horsey noises. And humans, I mean, we're herd animals. We were meant to support each other and to reach out to people like you, Kirsten, and to allow in that support, because that is then what leads to no gray mornings, no living ivy coffee drip. I mean, there's nothing wrong with coffee, but the ivy coffee drip, that's like, we all know those people, right? They have been that person at one time. Here.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just did have a conversation with some entrepreneurs the other day, and I told them I'm planning on running a group in the fall that was a place that entrepreneurs could come and bring their whole selves, because so often we're in these mastermind groups where we're expected to show up and be professional and talk about how well everything's going, and God forbid we admit what a shit show everything else is, excuse my language, behind the scenes. Right? And so to just have a place that's a safe place to go with just a small cohort of women, where we can just be our full selves. And so I'm going to be leading this cohort coming through in the fall. So that's if you're a person that would love to be in a space where you can bring your whole person, hit me up, because that's what I'm going to be doing this fall.
I love that. And before this fall, because when you say fall, my brain is like, that's August, right? Because, and everyone's going to laugh. I'm like, August 1st, there's a leaf on the ground. It's pumpkin. But I know for most people, August might be like end of September, October, definitely October.
Yeah, so this will be starting in September, ideally, and schedules permitting. So that's when kids go back to school, and a lot of people who are doing many millions of things may have a little time open up. And the cooler weather, the shorter days, it's a good time for, I think anyone who's been a student in the Northern Hemisphere thinks of fall as, go back to school time. So we all are ready for something new come fall. It's kind of built into our system.
It is. And before that, is there, so I know that's in a couple months, what do you have right now where someone's like, actually, I kind of think that I might need to talk to her, but I guess I'll wait till fall. Like, what do you have before then? How should somebody reach out to you?
Well, I am always available through my website and also on my social media channels. So if you just hit me up in the DMs, we can set up a time to chat. I always have open enrollment for my Next Spark Accelerator program when I have space, which I do currently have. The client I just was speaking of, when my clients finish up, it usually opens up a new space because they only take a certain amount of people at a time. So I have a room for 1 or 2 in July and August for my one-on-one clients. And I also have been having a summer special for my VIP days. So if you're a person that isn't really sure whether you might like to do this kind of work or not, that might be a perfect way to get acquainted with this work, where we just would dive in deep and get a lot of stuff done in one day, and then you could see how that worked and how it felt and whether you wanted to continue or not. Yeah, go ahead.
And just so, because I know maybe not everybody here knows you as well as I do, but like when Kirsten says contact me, we'll have a chat. So the good news is, because I know so many high functioning entrepreneurs that are very sales oriented listening to this, Kirsten's not going to turn around and shove sales down your throat, right? You're going to ask them a couple questions to see where they're at. And if it
Right, right. Well, and because the work we do is so personal, really there has to be a good connection and understanding between me and you and what you want to accomplish and whether I'm the person to help you do it. So the call would really be just for clarity, right? Like, what do you want? Is that something I do? And what would it look like to work together if you're curious? And then you get to think about whether which thing would be the right thing for you. And along those lines, I do occasionally do free workshops. So right now I have one scheduled for August 2nd, Wednesday, August 2nd it is. And I that's coming up fast. And so I think we're calling it the High Achievers Guide to Playing Big and Taking Action Without Overwhelm. So, but it's, just kind of that overview of what are these things that we should look at so that the common obstacles I see come up with all my really amazing women and what they encounter and how to get through it. So that's something that I'll be giving in on August 2nd if you want to attend that.
Awesome. So when we're off here, can you get into the comments and post your media links and even post a link to whatever's going to get them to that workshop? So that way they just click, click, click.
Yep. Well, for now, I'll do and I'm currently enrolling by just contacting me. At some point, my assistant will have the actual, click link where you can just sign up.
Awesome.
So we'll get that in there too. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely get your Facebook just so they don't have to kind of like track you down through my Facebook page, right?
I'd be happy to. Yeah, absolutely.
Stalking, but in a good way. Like, yes. Thank you so much for being here today, Kirsten. See, I even do it. I keep having to remind myself. Well, tell everybody what your little
right. Well, so Kirsten is a word that could be pronounced many different ways, and and it's very prone to people saying Kirsten or Kristen or whatever. So I usually tell everyone it's Kirsten, like curse words. So you can remember curse words, Kirsten. Yeah.
And I love it, and that's what actually keeps me. You'll see me like stop like mid coming out of my mouth. And I'm like, wait, it's not that word, it's the other one, it's the curse word. So that like works perfectly. Like you've created a neurotransmitter in my head that has like this big like, wait, warning, Amanda. Wrong name.
It's a hard name. It's a hard name. A lot of people just call me my last name because it's easier, Beske.
Yeah, that works too. That works too. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing and giving these examples, right, for people to really let that sink in. For sharing your heart and your personal backstory. So thank you.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun. It's been a fun chat. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.